The do's and don'ts of text analysis part 2. The 10 do's, the things to do. 1. Take the text seriously. Make sure you respect it. Make sure you always keep in mind that it's a complex text. It's not something obvious. The more you think about it, the more you take into consideration that the author really put a lot of work into writing it, the better your ideas and the better your results will be and the more points you will get. Okay? 2. Interpret the text. That sounds obvious, but what I mean is really make sure you understand how it works and then really explain it. Why did the author start the text with this particular sentence? Why did he not choose some other sentence? Why did he use questions here? Why does he use an imperative here? Why does he use colloquial language or an image? Why does he start in such a provocative or seemingly polemic way or whatever? Why does he do this? How could he have done it differently? What would have been the result if he had? So why did he do it like this? Okay, make sure you write this down. 3. Refer all your findings to your central thesis, and you should have one. Your central thesis could be quite open. You could just say the main character experiences the typical conflicts of an immigrant in New York in the 1890s, and then you refer every image and metaphor and every aspect of the content and every syntactical thing that you analyze to this central thesis, so that you never just point out a number of findings that have no connection to each other. Always make sure everything refers to this central thesis, and then your essay will be nicely organized. Use a checklist of possible aspects to analyze. In your task, you will usually be given an aspect or 2 or 3, like look at narrative technique and syntax. But often it just says look at language, and it helps to have a checklist to really look at stuff that you might interpret, so that you don't lose sight of anything, forget anything. And I always like to point out the importance of narrative technique, perspective, point of view. How is something conveyed to the reader, and why was it conveyed in this way? Point out connections to what you have learned in class or outside of class, in your life outside of school. It's always something that impresses teacher when you're able to see the parallels, see the similarities to something else you've discussed with regard to your major topic in the curriculum. Make sure, of course, you don't lose sight of your text, of the text at hand, and don't get lost in things outside the text. But it's always a nice idea at 1 or 2 points in your essay to say, this reminds me of the similar problem that so-and-so experienced and in this novel that we talked about, or whatever. Language. Impress your teacher by using fancy structures, words, and phrases. Do use gerunds, infinitive, if clauses, passive constructions, participle constructions. Do use structures that show that your English has grown beyond Year 7 English. Same with words and phrases. You should really show that you have a lot of English at your disposal. If you want to know how to do this, have a look at my video, Getting Better in English, which you find on this channel. Use connectives to connect your thoughts. Be sure to use the right one. Do you know the difference, for instance, between first, firstly, and at first? Make sure you really know the right connectives. You know a lot of them, and do use them. You get points for structuring your text by using connectives and making paragraphs. Use the right words for when somebody says something. Bad students will always say he says, or slightly better, he talks about, but both of them don't mean anything. They don't say what somebody's actually doing. So use the right verb to say if somebody demands something, or wonders, or realizes, or understands, or explains, or criticizes, or whatever the person is doing. Okay, use the right verb to say what he's doing by saying something. Use topical words and phrases. Make sure that the teacher sees that you've actually learned the vocabulary that refers to this topic. For instance, when you look at a text that is about migration, then it should contain, or your essay should contain rather, expressions like to discriminate against something, to face oppression, under or overrepresented, the struggle for equal rights or equality, and so on and so on. Okay, make sure you have a lot of these words and phrases that belong to the topic at hand. Finally, reread your text, edit it, correct it. Spend a lot of time doing this. Okay, really read it in your head as if you were speaking it aloud. You can't do that in an exam. You can't speak out loud, but you can imagine listening to the text in your head, and you will spot a lot of tiny mistakes when you do this. But also you will just find things that you can just improve, where you can add a word or two and make them better. I hope these 10 do's will help you. Have a good time using them, and I wish you much success using them.